Hello, I'm Tim Robinson. Welcome to another edition of a Specialist Group Insight, our segment on the NOTAM podcast, where we talk to the Royal Aeronautical Society specialist groups. And with me today is Chris Hunter, who is chair of the Flight Simulation Group Conference. Flight Simulation Group Conference chair. Chris, welcome to Specialist Group Insight and the NOTAM podcast.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Now, you're on the show to talk about our very exciting event we've got coming up in October. But first, just tell us a little bit about the RAeS Flight Simulation Specialist Group. What does it do?
So we look at all aspects of flight simulation. We're one of the longest running specialist groups in terms of putting on conferences, going way back to 1970.
Wow.
First conference being held at the Society in the presence of Ed Link, the man who invented flight simulation and who our named lecturer is named after. He was there, and the Duke of Edinburgh was there. Those who remember the Duke, he was very keen on flying, used to like flying the 146 for the Royal Flight, as well as doing all kinds of other stuff and some more remarkable stuff when he was speaking about foreigners, perhaps. But anyway, he was a very good chap. He was there supporting us. In the group, we have members from industry who build flight simulators. We have members from regulations, CAA, etc. We have obviously operators, both military and civil, and we have academic groups. And it was primarily looking at initially flight simulation and working through to the level D full flight simulators that train the pilots that fly us all on holiday. And getting that regulation established through the 80s, expanding military simulation for all the network simulation was sort of the next phase. And now we're sort of in a phase where simulation has been applied nearly everywhere. We have digital twins, so the simulation for that. One of the topics to roll into the conference is that we're now looking at, or you're now looking at certifying aircraft by simulation.
Wow.
Rather than the other way around, where the aircraft would have a simulation model to predict how it would fly, but it had to fly to prove that was correct. The models have now got such a high pedigree that the models are being used to certify aircraft, which is quite a turnaround. And we have a session on that led by my colleague Stefan Goran from Saab on the second day of the conference. So I hope that's a quick overview.
Yeah, and I'm right in thinking also is that the Society's flight simulation group has also been key in helping set the standards as an independent, neutral body for simulators all around the world.
Indeed, yeah. So way back to that work in the late 70s, early 80s, and through the 80s, there was the end result of that was a working group, international working group that then passed a document called, just colloquially called 9625, which is, as usual with these standards, you refer to them by the number. But it was for defining how simulators could be defined based on that definition, how you would have to test them, and what actual maneuvers you could do with them. So this was actually perhaps 20 years ago that some of this stuff was first done. And it is now coming back round to be applied because simulators, as you can appreciate, with newer technologies such as augmented reality, artificial intelligence, etc., they are moving away from the big box on legs to all these other hybrid and blended kind of training devices. And those really, when you're running a training center, you look at them and go, well, what training credit can I get? And under the older regulations, the answer was none. And you use those devices really to prepare people so that when they went in the big expensive box, they could more reliably and more quickly do the important training and pass and get themselves qualified to be on the aircraft. But they're now using that standard that we had, which is being reworked into an update by the ICAO and IASA, who are incorporating these things, along with UKCA involved at both levels, into updated standards so that you can say, right, this is what my simulator looks like, and this is what I want to do with it. What tests do I have to do to prove it will do that? Rather than the full list prescriptive tests for a level D sim, where it would fail straight away because, oh, well, there's no motion. Well, I don't need motion because this is what I'm going to train. So it's a more intelligent approach. It's taken a while, but it is now coming into actual regulation and standards as an update where it's really going to be applied. And that's what our first session of the conference is about, regulation. And it's being delivered by some of the people who are chairing those working groups at ICAO, IASA, etc., or certainly leading lights in those. Presentations from FAA, IASA, and CAE Boeing representatives who are on those committees, and several other people.
Yeah, so I popped into your flight simulation conference last year, and I think there was also something on there on the idea of certification of the devices themselves in aligning them with actual crewed aircraft, and you'd have a blanket approval rather than them doing kind of one by one. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was one of the proposed approaches from terrible, I can't recall his name, but a fairly senior guy at EASA, and it was his idea of what the next step could be. I think that's a little bit early for in terms of practical
Yeah.
applications. And what we're finding is, and it's always with new regulations, most people are busy doing the day job. They're trying to design the new and sell the new simulator if they work in that part of the industry, and then picking up what's happening with the regulation, what is changing, and how they're going to have to prove this new wonderful device that they've been developing for 2 or 3 years. It can sometimes come to a bit of a challenge if you haven't kept in touch. And I think one of the big uses of our conference is it's a 2-day event where you can talk directly to the people who are putting these regulations together and the people who are going to be applying them from FAA, CA when they come to approve your new training device. We have this year decided not just to do a session on regulation, but to do a session on how new regulation is being applied to these new devices. Rather clever title that my colleague Alison Kukel from the Netherlands, who's chairing that session, cleared for takeoff, we're calling it. So cleared for takeoff, innovation meets regulation.
Okay.
And in there, we've got people from Loft Dynamics, from various institutes who've got new simulators that they're working on, from Leonardo, Alaska Airlines, and some various consultants from Australia and the UK who've been looking at these new devices, and they're going to give examples, real world examples of how regulation's been applied, or in some cases, how they think it could be applied to the things that are coming.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic. So, just as a reminder, where and when is that happening?
So it's in London. It's our headquarters at 4 Hamilton Place, and it's on the 21st and 22nd of October. So as we record, it's just over 3 weeks away.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so one for the diary anyway. So, the new technologies that involves things like VR, mixed reality, AI, maybe powered ATC. I mean, that's a very exciting thing to discuss as to. I mean, you just think about as someone who has a VR headset at home for flight simulation, it's just incredible. But presumably then the thing is what can you get credit for this? How is it useful, etc. I know a few years ago people were sort of saying about well, it's great, but I can't write on a notepad on my an e-board or whatever, or and for that I suppose you need mixed reality.
Yeah, mixed or augmented reality, where you're looking at the real world via a camera, where you can overlay virtual images and information. We've got a couple of applications of that. We've got Director of Flight Ops from Alaska Airlines, Nigel Sargent, is talking about how they're expanding the capabilities of their low-level devices, the ones I was referring to earlier, using XR, extended reality. I mean, there's almost every letter in the alphabet you can put in front of an R for the realities these days. But it's talking about broadening access to the simulators, cutting costs and reshaping their training pathways. The other elements that we're looking at, artificial intelligence,
Wow,
referred to being applied to air traffic control. So there's been a long and slow and steady push to increase the fidelity of air traffic simulation. Because even today on the best simulators, what you'll often find, and certainly going back 5, 10, 20 years, it was just quiet in terms of air traffic. If you stick a headset on yourself, sat on a jump seat, trying to get out of Heathrow, you wonder how on earth they ever get in to talk and get permission to push back off the ramp. It is so busy on that air traffic headset. You've got to be on the right frequency, switching at the right time. Now, all the frequencies and things were simulated, but the instructor, who was also trying to instruct and make sure people were doing what's supposed to be doing and picking up when they're making small errors, was also having to role play all the different air traffic controls and set the different frequencies, et cetera, et cetera. And so by default, although there were a few recorded, essentially just recordings that were played in the background to create some if you like, air traffic clutter, they weren't realistic. Now, what has been developed over the last few years by a number of companies, but leading amongst them is ASTI from the States, is it's called SATSI, so it's Simulated Air Traffic Control Environment. And this really is actually giving you proper recorded, not proper auto-generated air traffic control messages passing between the controller and the other simulated aircraft. So if we're sat on the stand and we're waiting for the aircraft to push back next to us, and that's what you can look out the window and see it. Now with their system, you can actually hear them requesting to push back, the fact that they're pushed back, or asking to be held so that we can push back. So it's so much more immersive and so much more realistic. And on the approach, you've got people encroaching on the runway, people in the circuit with you, all that traffic is there. And if we change route, it adapts correctly to it.
Oh, wow.
So it is using intelligence to work that out.
Yeah.
Now, it's been a long way coming. There's a lot of people saying we should have been doing this for years, which I also one of the people who agree with that. But it's the way of the world. Until you get it in regulation, if people can get away without building it, the tendency is, with a cost-driven world, that you will not build it in there. It is coming into regulation now. There's still a little bit of debate about how strongly. It's been in there as a recommendation or an alternative for quite a while. But our evening lecture at the end of the first day, named after Ed Link, the founder of flight simulation back in the 30s, is being delivered by a couple of senior people from ASTI, Neil Waterman and Jeremy Goodman. And they will be talking about this journey of air traffic control. So they give the background to what has been the standard for simulators, as in not very much air traffic, how they develop their product, and how it's being applied now on various airlines around the world and training programs, as well as the military, of course, but also how regulation is coming, and certainly how they hope it is going to come to be applied in the very, very near future.
And one of the things that you obviously you said about is 9625.
9625, yeah.
Now, how far away is that? And would you say that this conference is a key kind of venue to kind of provide input, learn about it, and kind of have your say and find out what's going on if it's going to be the next big thing?
Well, so 9625 has been around since I think 2005.
Okay.
But it was a standard that you could use, but it wasn't the standard that you had to use.
Right.
It is now, and the methodology of it, what is it you want to train, what equipment you can have on it, how do I prove it, is being adopted into standards by EASA. That standard is out for review. It's always very hard to say exactly, but I think there was a date this year that it might be coming out, but it might be early next year. But certainly, if you're building a simulator now to get qualified next year or in the next couple of years, it's very likely that that's the standard that you will be able to apply. You'll still be able to do the old-fashioned, it's a full level D, here's all the tests, we just do it, level 7, I think it was in 9625. So yes, have you got an opportunity to contribute? That has gone out, that came out last year for people to contribute. It's still possible to give some feedback, but I think they are more at the stage now of making very, very minor changes. And I think it's certainly too late to make any major changes. But in terms of finding out what's coming, the best place to be, if you're not already on the committee and been contributing to it, is our conference on the 21st, 22nd, because the people from those committees and the people who are going to apply the standards from EASA, CAA, FAA are all going to be there.
Yeah, and one of the other interesting things is sort of in keeping an eye on new technology and particularly on augmented reality. Augmented reality and sort of simulation is also making its way onto actual aircraft. I mean, we've got the sort of there's the synthetic radars and stuff that are being used in training aircraft for the military and things like that. But augmented reality in what RAeS 6 are doing in making a virtual reality headset that is projecting virtual aircraft and 3D objects into the pilot's field of vision while they're in the air, and then you can kind of link it, I suppose, with simulators on the ground and things like that. So it's a very exciting era at the moment.
It is, yeah. And to be honest, though, the simulation in that is not very difficult, because all you're doing is creating a tiny holographic picture, if you like, of a tanker or whatever it is that you want to try, or a wingman. The real clever technology there is getting that to be completely synchronized in position out in the real world on a headset in a live, harsh environment compared to the nice computer rooms that our stuff normally runs in. And making it such that it is totally believable, the pilot depth perception on the headset, and an image that actually keeps up with your head when you move your head around. Those have been the challenges for headsets over the previous years, and the resolution, of course, and they are getting there. And yeah, I've seen RAeS 6, it's very impressive. They won't be there, but we will have presentations on the new sixth generation fighter from Dr. Mark Stevenson. He's the technical lead from DSTL for test and evaluation on FCAS. He will be talking about how they're using simulation to speed up development and delivery on that aircraft. And that's part of a session that I referred to earlier. I called him Stefan earlier. I apologise. It's Goran Anka from Saab. They're talking about accelerating aircraft development by simulation. There has been a working group called G35, or the subcommittees, and they have issued a standard quite recently. Anthony Hunt from Boeing, who we've been talking to in the preparation for this conference, just recently received the EdLink Award at FSEMC for his services to simulation. And this new standard, Goran is going to be explaining what's in that standard and how it is being applied or can be applied. And then we have some examples of application, use of modeling, for instance, for ship integration for helicopters. Mark White from Liverpool University, along with Leonardo's John Goodby, will be talking about how they've used modeling there to actually certify helicopters to fly on ships by use of simulation. Similar certification efforts from Saab as well going on in there.
Yeah, I think it's also worth explaining to listeners is that it's not just the flight simulation, the flight simulation that people sort of say, or flight simulation, but it's also the digital modelling and also things like maintenance training. Simulators now evolved for teaching people how to fix aircraft on the ground. It's not just the pilot task, is it?
No, so we have a presentation from Rheinmetall, from Jürgen Uthman, and they're talking about maintenance training, combining training rigs with augmented reality. So you've got your hands on the actual kit with a electronic spanner or screwdriver, whatever, more likely pulling a connector, looking at data, but then that's been enhanced by the augmented reality headset. And you can do great things with maintenance training, like pulling up the checklists or pulling up the instruction that you're supposed to be following. And you can tailor that amount of instruction and the pace of it based on how well the student is doing, or whether he's a new ab initio student, or someone who's on a recurrent check, or someone who's perhaps just struggling a little bit with the course, or someone who's finding it too easy because they're quickly going through things. The dynamic aspect of the instruction, the little bit of intelligence, if you like, that's in there, is enabled to deliver the training as the student needs it, and then record that information, and then maybe say, right, next time we're going to start the training at a slightly higher level for them, because this guy's coping, or this guy's struggled a bit on that course. He doesn't need to do it again, but let's run a bit slower, make sure he really did learn what we hoped he was supposed to learn from the previous session. Yeah, so there's that there. And you talk about simulation in many, many areas. We have a session. It's almost as if you've been reading the program, Tim, on applications of simulation that my colleague from the Flight Sim Group, John Cook, is chairing. And in there, we have a presentation from BAE Systems about how they're using simulation to look at what's called turbulation, which is what you probably think it is, which is difficulty of working in a turbulent environment in an airplane using a large screen. Modern cockpits, and certainly FCAS and the aircraft that are being looked at, or the systems looked at, are needing to address, as you can imagine, if you're trying to touch a touch screen and your finger is bouncing around. We have this on simulators on motion. We actually have instructors grasping the side of the instructor station so that their finger hits the right button and they don't put the wrong malfunction in or freeze the simulator when they didn't mean to. It is an issue. How do you use a touch screen in a bouncing environment? And that is one of the studies that Chris Friel from BAE Systems has been doing, looking at using a motion simulator to test out the simulation of a system, which is a touchscreen that's going to go into an advanced fighter aircraft. In that session also, we're very lucky to have Dr. Craig Brown from Brown Sim, who has been working in flight simulation for quite a while. More recently, the last, I can't remember how many years, but a number of years now, he's been applying what he learned about motion queuing in Formula One. Working with some of the big teams such as McLaren, I believe. And he thinks there are some lessons for us to learn on how he has driven motion queuing. Obviously, a very different environment. You have a lot of acceleration, obviously, which we're not too bad at on flight simulators. But lateral movement is quite a big issue, and it's quite difficult to do correctly. That big swing you get if you're sat at the front of an airplane as you turn onto the runway, etc., or yawing when you lose an engine, perhaps more critically in training. And some ideas that he's learned there from how to do motion queuing in Formula One. And of course, most of the people in the room were very keen to hear about what he's actually done in Formula One as well, because I'm sure that will be fascinating. But that's part of the applications of simulation session as well.
Well, I mean, motion cueing. I mean, as a fan of PC flight simulation and VR, there's some incredible. I mean, obviously, you're probably well aware of people like home cockpits and 737s, and they built there in the garage and things like that. But there's been some incredible people there who built their own, like, motion rigs at home. I don't think I've got the space or the finances to do it, but it's just incredible to see that now that the technology has come down where it's possible for somebody to do that and have it there in their spare room and given enough space and finance and what have you. Fantastic. Yeah. And so very exciting. We're getting updated there on GCAP. There's going to be something on GCAP, future fighters, how it's supporting there. The other emerging area is advanced air mobility, isn't it? And sort of eVTOL simulators. So and we've got there something there on novel framework for VTOL capable flight training device standards. So presumably that will include advanced air mobility.
It does, yeah. We're lucky enough to have Eric Bird from Texas A&M University. He's coming over talking about some work that they've been doing on bridging the gap on certification standards for flight simulators for these advanced air mobility vehicles. The companies that are building those have been using simulation, obviously, a lot to get to where they've got to. There's various mixes of them, some still to fly, some early flight testing, some quite late flight testing. Simulation has been used in those. We've had sessions in the past on those areas. The feeling this year was, because we each year we look at what we're going to do in the conference. There's always seems to be a place for regulation because it is so key to simulation. It is what has allowed, and it still blows my mind now, zero flight time, which was achieved in the 80s. And if you don't know what it is, some of our listeners maybe don't, it means that you and I can go on holiday, and the guy who sat in the first officer's seat on our little EasyJet or British Airways plane that's taken us on holiday has never been on that aeroplane before. He does not need to have been. He may well have been, obviously, but legally he can train for all of that on the simulator. And the first time he goes on the real airplane, he's fully qualified to take us on holiday as the co-pilot, not the main pilot, but as the co-pilot. Now, a lot of airlines do like them to do refresher flights, etc., but legally they don't have to because the simulation is so good and so in depth. Now, it's achieved that by having this very rigid standard, which is why it's been quite difficult, because it's been the industry's been very reluctant to qualify low-level devices to allow people to say, yes, you can now don't have to do this on the airplane because you did it on my big simulator. That's fine, because you did it with a headset with a unproven technology, with stuff that the regulator maybe doesn't understand or doesn't know how to qualify. That's been an issue. That's what we're addressing, and that's why we're focusing on the regulatory side of things now. And those new regulations are, and not just have more than one eye on advanced air mobility vehicles and the types of simulators that they're having, and also the different systems that they're having to operate, the different way that they fly, etc. So regulation, yeah, we're looking at that this year there. Not so much on the simulation. We've focused on that in the past. But this year we thought we'd look at regulation. People are actually applying regulation now, and a little bit about future, as you referenced Eric Bird's presentation, as well as the other applications that we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, and just to clarify for our listeners as well, Chris, when you were talking about a pilot, he or she never having flown in the airplane before, you were talking about, like, a 787 or an A350, the airliner, not having never stepped in any kind of light aircraft, because there's been an issue.
There's a whole training path they go through through their PPL, and it's not like they've never been off the ground before. So it is a type conversion. So overstating it to catch the attention. But if, for instance, I don't know, you've flown on 737s and you've been a captain on those, or maybe done quite well, and you're retraining for 74, more like 78, 77 these days. The first time you go on that new type, you're going in the co-pilot seat. You don't have to have been up in that plane before. You've trained it all on the simulator.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we're coming to sort of like the sort of end of this sort of segment now. Top things you're looking forward to at the conference?
It's a lot of work. It being over is probably not the answer you wanted to hear. No, what I'm really looking forward to, the Formula One stuff, yeah, that's always going to be fun. Some of the applications of AI, particularly, I think the lecture in the evening from ASTI, pulling together all the work that those guys in that industry have been doing for the last 10 or 15 years and how it is nearly there. We allow people in EdLink, and we encourage them to be controversial. And so I'm looking forward to them, airing a bit of slight, perhaps dirty laundry in public about how and why it's been so difficult to get where they are. Because if you don't actually challenge and say we didn't do this well enough, you don't get better. And I don't think we have been quick enough at adopting SARA, SARTSI, Simulated Air Traffic Control, so many acronyms around. I'm particularly looking forward to that. But the whole thing really, I mean, you look at AI, fascinating stuff that's been done. Thales got some studies on that I haven't mentioned. They'll be upset about that for me. Looking at how metrics-based stuff is done in evidence-based training. It's a really good conference. I mean, it's a conference I would pay to go to if I wasn't having to go there to run it. It looks really good. I'm very, very pleased with the overall program.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that is one for the diaries, people. So set, if you're interested in flight simulation, training, maintenance, GCAP as well. 21st, 22nd of October, London and online. Be there or be square, as they say. Final question to you, Chris. So, as you probably gathered, I am a big fan of the home flight simulator stuff. How far away in terms of fidelity are you? Do you think now we are with the home stuff compared to professional gear?
Still a way off. It's those critical high maneuvers, and basically you're never going to have the same flight control system. You are very unlikely to have that physical environment that you're sat in with all the physical panels. You're reaching out to touch, and the motion as well. Bouncing the seat around is fine, but that seat of the pants, when you lose an engine, everything needs to all actually come together in the right order and very quickly in terms of latency between onset of cues, visual, etc. One thing I would say is the visuals generally are better on your home flight simulators than they are on the big civil and military ones. So there's a plus. But in terms of depth of modeling, not quite, because they don't have access to the same data in terms of aerodynamics. And in terms of physical feel, haptics, etc., you'd be spending a fortune on the real kit. They're very good. I would use them if I didn't get to play with the real things. Having got to play with the real things and coming back to the home sims, it's kind of like, I spent all day doing this on something slightly better, so I'm not going to do that at home. Thank you.
Brilliant. All right. Well, on that note, I will leave it at that. Chris, so thanks so much for giving us coming on the show and telling us all about this fantastic conference that's going to be happening in October. If you want to go and book, it's on aerosociety.com and navigate yourself over to Aerosociety events. It's on our rolling online diary. There is a full program there. You can check it all out. It's going to be a really exciting couple of days there. Can't wait. And get signed up and get booked. Chris, thanks very much.
Thank you, Tim. I hope to see you at the conference.
Thank you.